There's a quote attributed to Heraclitus on the realities of soldiers in battle. He says, "Look, out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets, 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back." And ironically, one of the greatest instances in the anime medium that warrant this saying is that of a Japanese corporate supervisor who finds himself amidst a world war in an alternate world. Though before this, his job is basically firing people, he also gets a kick out of it and is satisfied with his current social standing. However, one day in 2013, when he fires yet another employee, the employee gets all emotional and bent out of shape, but since he wasn't contributing to the company in any major way at all, he is fired anyway. This story doesn't end well. Later, when our protagonist is about to get on the train, he is pushed onto the tracks by that same employee. But suddenly, before his free trial on living gets expired, time comes to a stop. He starts hearing the voice of an entity who claims himself to be God. People on the train station are being used as avatars by this entity. The protagonist replies that he doesn't believe in the metaphysical and labels the entity as Being X. He also goes on to state that the modern world doesn't need a god. Only those who are born in preposterous danger and uncertainty need to have faith. Listening to this, Being X decides to teach him a lesson on how to have faith. If one's faith depends on the circumstances, then he'll be giving exactly that. Absurdly harsh circumstances. Just like that, the man in question dies right then and there and is instantly reincarnated as a cute little blonde girl in an alternate Europe. Not to mention, it's 100 years in the past, meaning the First World War will soon begin. Now, moving on, we'll call him Tanya because, well, that's what he has been reincarnated as. Right from the very beginning, things aren't looking so well. Tanya grows up in an orphanage and one that barely makes ends meet. There is a depressing air all around the orphanage and not much changes for the first few years of her life. That is until one day when a regular magical aptitude test reveals that she has an extraordinary aptitude for magic. That's right, magic is actually a thing in this alternate world. Tanya still has the same head on her shoulders. Now that her abilities have been discovered, it's only a matter of time before she is enlisted in the army. She already knows that. And so, instead of trying to hide, she decides to be proactive and voluntarily enlist instead. Otherwise, there is no future for her considering how she's an orphan during wartime. It doesn't take long before she starts making strong impressions. She is acknowledged and even entrusted with training new cadets at the renowned military academy. However, despite the fact that she should be in elementary school, she's absolutely thorough and ruthless while whipping the cadets into shape. So much so that a military officer named Rerugan is astonished at what she is about to do to them. Time passes by and it's the year 1923. Tanya may be 9 years old, but she is an artillery observer at the Northern Garrison Unit. Even though she didn't sign up for it, when there is a sudden invasion from a northern country called Entente, she is left with no choice but to hold them off on her own. The enemy lieutenant named Anson Su is leading arrow mages straight at them. Tanya is perplexed by the intensity of the situation, but she hoards them toward herself and then uses the detonate on her chest to make most of them explode. Fortunately, she disconnected from it right on time and barely survived. Her body is taken back to the garrison headquarters. All the authorities are in her hospital room, genuinely thanking her for her heroic endeavor. She is awarded the Silver Wings Assault Badge, although she'd rather not be on the front lines again. There is no going back, especially now that she is celebrated as a hero. Like, they literally dress her up in cute clothes and all. Sooner than later, she recovers from her injuries and gets sent to be a part of the Tactical Instructor Squad. She breathes a sigh of relief because now she won't be on the front. There, she is asked to test a new type of computation jewel. It is basically a device used by mages to perform magic. Although it is too unstable to be actually used in battle, the chief development engineer is obnoxious. He tries to push her to test its limit, but because of its instability, she mocks and criticizes the advance, informs the authorities, and stops this project. That same night, while she's in her room, Being X uses a nutcracker doll to talk to her. He is disappointed considering how she still hasn't developed much faith, and sure enough, Tanya just shoots the doll. The following day when she wakes up, she is unsure if last night was a dream or not, but when she sees a paper with "God wills it" written on it, this was essentially a warning to her. The chief engineer is manipulated by Being X into gaslighting Tanya to be a part of experiment once again. She does so, but things go terribly wrong. The device is too unstable, and a point comes when she is mere instances away from exploding. That's when Being X asks her again if she's ready to have faith. He also stabilizes the jewel and saves her life, which causes her to instinctively pray to Being X, much to her dismay. Anyways, Tanya does have to be careful. If she dies again, she won't ever be reincarnated. Next year, she is sent to the front lines yet again as second lieutenant. She is ruthless. If you don't follow her orders, she'd rather have you dead. In the eyes of the spectators, she's a psychopath who is dubbed Devil of the Rhine, not just for her ruthlessness but also her combative performance. Lieutenant Rarigan calls her a monster in the form of a girl. Meanwhile, as the Battle of Rhine dissipates, a soldier named Victoria realizes that mages who disobeyed Tanya and were sent back during the battle are now dead. But looks like Tanya knew it would turn out to be this way. Later, Tanya is off to officer training, but she recommends Victoria for that as well, and so they both commence preparations. Subsequently, the headquarters come to the realization that they need a rapid response unit in the Imperial Army as soon as possible. Time continues to pass, and it's already been 6 months since Tanya returned from the front lines and resumed her officer training. One day, she's in the library where she meets General Zetur, a shrewd man who asks for her thoughts on the ongoing war. She immediately replies that it will become a world war, and then goes on to state her reasoning for it as well. The optimal course of action the kingdom can take, she puts great emphasis on the agility of mages. The general is impressed and wants her to make a report on these thoughts. Tanya gets excited at this opportunity because if she can exercise her intellect, she may not have to go back to the front lines. It's a great opportunity for career advancement, and you bet she is going to realize the full scope of it. She is then at the cafe where an academy rival named Major Uger shares his concerns on the situation. He is terrified about the war and how it will have an impact on his family. Most importantly, his young daughter who may also have to fight. Tanya starts empathizing with him, but in reality, all she is doing is emotionally manipulating him into dropping out of the academy to pursue some other career. The less number of her rivals, the better. Later, General Zetur shares Tanya's plan with General Rudersdorf, and then at the headquarters, he shares the plan during a conference. Everyone is pleased and demands for it to be put into action. Tanya is then invited to a dinner where she's told about this development and is also promoted to the rank of captain. She will have to take charge of a new mage battalion. Unfortunately, this meant more danger than before when she was part of the front lines. Her intellect backfired. Still, she hasn't given up yet. She starts wondering how to make it so the battalion doesn't get implemented in the first place. But her assistant is now Victoria, which is alright. She's a sweet girl, but assigning a girl as Tanya's assistant means they are being considerate, and so they want results. A test is held to see if these new mages are actually worth anything or not, but Tanya basically just fails everyone and states that they are not worthy. The superiors want her to lower her standards or there won't be a new battalion, and so she accepts on the condition that she'll be responsible for training them into proper mages who are actually worth any crap. When they ask about the time she'll need, she says she'll need an entire month. The superiors are alarmed because they know how it takes around 2 years of training to turn someone into a proper soldier. General Zetur gives her the green light and tells her that she can do whatever she wants with them. And so, the month-long grueling training begins. To give you an idea of how insane this training is going to be, Tanya will be putting them through hell with the intention of making them quit. Many of them come to the verge of dying, and when it looks like someone has choked on some snow, she comes flying and kicks them in the back. Although he survived thanks to that, this display was a nightmare. The recruits realize that if they decide to quit, they'll have to go to something much worse, and so this gives them all the motivation to continue with the training. The month passes by and the battalion is ready. Tanya couldn't complain because they somehow managed to survive the hell she put them through. It is dubbed the 203rd Aerial Mage Battalion, and they are instructed to go to the Grand Duchy of Dacia, which has crossed imperial borders. Tanya and her battalion absolutely destroyed the Dacians. The enemy had no mages or advanced techniques. She then takes the battalion with her to the Dacian capital for the sake of chaos. They soon come across an arms factory which is apparently not secure at all from aerial attacks. Tanya is going to blow it up, but a sneak attack like this is probably a violation of the international law. They'll have to inform the enemy in advance so that they can retaliate. Tanya does exactly that, but she does in the cutest, most childish voice those guys have ever heard. They think it's a prank, laugh it off, only to then be blown up by the shameless attacks from Tanya's battalion. It was an absolutely overwhelming success for the Empire. Now the Imperial Army will occupy Dacia by winter, and so the Empire shifts its attention to the other two major foes, Entente and the Republic. If they can destroy Entente first, that would be ideal, but they are currently lacking in supplies. Most of them went with the Imperial Army to Dacia after all. So the headquarters think this through and decide to send Tanya's battalion to a region named Norden, where they'll go up against Entente. After learning about this, Tanya has a discussion with Victoria, where contemplating if there is a possibility that Entente is allied with either the Republic or the Allied Kingdom. And of course, to make life harder for Tanya, they are indeed allies. It's turning out to be a world war. There's no avoiding it. Tanya realizes that Being X is preparing the worst stage possible so that she has no choice but to pray to him. Then, at the region of Norden, another battalion is engaged in battle against Entente, but it's losses after losses, until Tanya shows up with her battalion and saves their asses. She launches a counterattack. The authorities offer her additional Imperial Army units, but she states that she wants to keep up the reputation of her 203rd Aerial Mage Battalion. She alone heads straight into the enemy territory to take out the bombers, while her battalion engages in the counterattack. She destroys most of them and lands on the ground to see if any of them are left. And that's when a dead soldier starts getting up. It's Being X screwing with her again. He asks Tanya about how it feels to fight the entire world. To give you some perspective, the Allied Kingdom is similar to the United Kingdom, and both Entente and the Republic are allied with the Allied Kingdom. Meanwhile, the empire which Tanya is a part of can be thought of as the equivalent of Imperial Germany. Tanya shrugs off Being X's words and shoots the dead soldier. She then comes across a hidden observation post of the Allied Kingdom, which was collecting data on her and proceeds to destroy it. At the Republic, a general named Pierre is informed of the losses at Norden. He is advised not to send any more mages to help Entente, as that's not proving so fruitful from the looks of it. But the general refuses. He was being manipulated by Being X. Subsequently, at the Ministry of Defense in Entente, there is Lieutenant Anson Su. He was among the invaders when Tanya earned the Silver Badge. It seems that he has been promoted to Colonel. But the man is wary of war. He doesn't want to leave his wife and daughter behind. His daughter's name is Mary Sue, by the way, like Mary Sue? So, after he becomes Colonel, Sue says goodbye to his family and leaves for his new post. As he's on the way, he looks into his belongings and realizes that his daughter has gifted a rifle to him as a Christmas present. How sweet! During this time, Tanya is with the Imperial Army in the north. She recommends a strategic retreat so that the Imperial Army can resupply and continue their offensive charge in spring. Her reasoning comes down to how if they continue, they will exhaust their resources and wouldn't be as effective. Still, the authorities choose to go with the offense. They ignore the potential consequences. Later, she talks with Rurigan and they deduce how the main purpose of the offense is to create a diversion so that they can launch a surprise attack. It happens as Tanya envisions. Her battalion is sent to the heavily defended region of Orsfjord. Colonel Su is also stationed here. He stops Tanya's battalion with his battalion of mages, but Tanya improvises, adapts, and overcomes. She leads the first company as they engage with the enemy, while the second and third companies of the battalion go ahead and destroy the cannons stationed at the coast. Su is rather aggressive. He's planning on taking out Tanya no matter what, but Tanya makes him fall into the sea and also takes his rifle. Tanya and her battalion had succeeded in taking out the defense at Orsfjord. Of course, when Colonel Su's family heard about it, his wife and daughter shed tears in agony. Mary Sue cries. Following this, Tanya's battalion is ordered to destroy an uprising in a city called Aren. It's under the influence of the Republicans. Their job is to stop it. It doesn't matter if civilians are killed. Just get the job done. When they get here, it appears that the city has spent a lot of time fortifying their defenses. The rebel army is told to evacuate the city, and since they don't evacuate even after the evacuation order, the international law is in Tanya's favor. Any and all people within the city are to be treated as enemies. The Aren rebels don't surrender or evacuate. They also murder an Imperial soldier, which kickstarts this war. Tanya and the Imperial artillery launch a full-scale attack that also results in countless deaths of the civilians. The Republican mages are left with no choice but to retreat, and just like that, the Empire regains control over Aren. Then it seems a second lieutenant is not keen on open firing at the rebels. Well, they are part of the Empire to begin with, but considering it was Tanya he was under, he is pressured and manipulated into following through till the end. Back at the headquarters, General Zatur talks to Rerigan and explains that the reasoning behind the destruction of Aren first came from Tanya herself. It was in one of these she wrote about conveniently using international law to one's advantage. Now back at the hospital in the Allied Kingdom, it looks like Colonel Su survived his bout with Tanya. In fact, he exclaims that he has been told by God to destroy the devil. Of course, in this case, the devil is Tanya. A few days later, Tanya meets an old acquaintance. Remember the Academy rival who talked about his fears with her? It's him, Major Yuger. He talks about how good of an idea it would be to withdraw their forces from Rhine and bait the Republic into a trap. It's more complicated than it sounds, but General Zatur later proposes this plan at the conference, and once again, the might of Tanya's battalion is needed. They'll be responsible for attacking the enemy headquarters once they have been baited into the trap. And so, to that end, the plan commences. First comes the disinformation about the tactical retreat of the Imperial forces. Lieutenant Rerigan explains to Tanya that the second phase of the operation is to invade the enemy headquarters and communication system when they are vulnerable. A high-speed rocket will be used to help Tanya's battalion quickly transport to the 3 possible locations where the enemy's headquarters are currently instated. The plan works. When the Imperial army supposedly retreats, the Republican army bravely starts their invasion. Little did they know about the plan, or the booby traps left by the Imperial army. On the other hand, Colonel Su is on an Allied Kingdom ship. He is silently anticipating the opportunity to kill Tanya. Back to Tanya's battalion, they were able to quickly shock and awe the enemy into submission. The entire ordeal was a success, and so they retreated on a submarine. However, the elite families of the Empire, otherwise referred to as the government, are all in a bad mood. If things had gone wrong with the plan, the Empire would have lost so much. For now, everyone awaits the status of Tanya's unit before planning next, because they still don't know how well things went on Tanya's end. Luckily, as we all know, the enemy command structure is in shambles. It's time for the third phase of the plan. Suddenly, all of the booby traps left by the Imperial army are detonated. Chaos ensues in the enemy, and before they could even understand what's going on, the Imperial army does them in. When the enemy authorities learn of what happened at the Republican Army's headquarters, they are appalled. Finally, it's time for the final stage of the plan where the Republican Army is completely taken out, but Colonel Su shows up with a mage unit and counterattacks. This attack definitely takes Tanya's battalion off guard, but they are no pussies. Rather than running with their tails between their legs, they retaliate. But with each passing minute, they are suffering losses. Su goes after Tanya and faces her one-on-one, but she manages to stab him. However, she instantly recalls him from before and realizes that he is possessed by Being X. He recomposes himself and grabs her. Thankfully, Victoria shows up and helps Tanya get away. Tanya then points a rifle and empties the entire magazine on Su. She destroys his magical defenses and fills his every hole with a bullet. Ah, that sounded evil, didn't it? In his final attempt, he detonates, but Tanya and Victoria manage to withstand it, and soon the reinforcements arrive, who then make the enemy mages run away. Looks like most of Tanya's battalion somehow managed to survive. In the end, the Republic had no choice but to abandon the region of Parisais, which was then occupied by the Imperial Army. A big success. And while the anime doesn't have any beach episodes, there is a short scene where the men are seen celebrating their victory on a beach, but Tanya and Victoria simply talk about what's next. She tries asking them permission to go and attack a Republican military post which may effectively end the war, but she is denied, and she is also denied from acting on her own. Later she talks to Rarigan where she explains that nothing has ended. This is only the beginning of what's to come next. No nation will ever allow the Empire to become the most powerful country in all of Europe. They'll definitely counterattack. But she guesses it's only human nature to continue fighting till one's last breath. Tanya was right. Well, of course she was. She has come from the modern world, and the modern world has seen 2 world wars. Like she envisioned the superpowers of the world from an alliance just to take out the Empire. The Allied Kingdom, Russie Federation, and United States will engage in war against the Empire. Soon enough, everyone in the Empire realizes that the war is far from over. The celebrations were indeed short-lived. Before long, Tanya and her battalion are sent to Africa to do something about the rest of the Republic. She was definitely angry, and so she goes on a rant about God. Right in front of her men, she exclaims that this war is proof God has failed. Everything is now in their hands, once again. And so once again, it's time to war. And as fate would have it, Colonel Sue's daughter, Mary Sue, is seen enlisting in the US Army. She is blessed with immense power by being X, and soon she'll come for Tanya. Yes, this is indeed only the beginning because the worst is yet to come. There is a sequel movie and the 2nd season is also in production, so definitely look forward to that, my friends. As for what happened until this point, what do you think of it? Share your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for free cookies. Otherwise, you may get enlisted in Tanya's battalion, so better not risk it. Well then, with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.